What happens when one of the biggest stars in entertainment sits down for what should be a routine interview, only to find herself facing the most hostile interrogation of her career? What unfolds when years of built-up resentment explode into an on-air confrontation so intense that security has to get involved? Today we are diving deep into the shocking moment. Jennifer Lopez walked onto the View set expecting promotion for her latest project, but instead walked into an ambush that left viewers stunned and the entertainment world buzzing for weeks. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story gets wilder than you could ever imagine. The morning started like any other at the View Studios in New York. Jennifer Lopez arrived in her signature style, draped in a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than most people make in a month. Her hair swept back in that effortlessly perfect way that only she could pull off. The production assistants were buzzing around her, offering water, adjusting her microphone, making sure everything was perfect for what everyone assumed would be another fluff-piece interview about her upcoming album and business ventures. Behar sat at the iconic table, shuffling through her notes with that mischievous smile she gets when she knows she has something juicy planned. Whoopi Goldberg was reviewing her opening remarks, occasionally glancing over at Joy with a look that suggested she might have some idea about what was coming. Sarah Haynes was chatting pleasantly with the crew, her usual warm demeanor intact, while Sunny Hostin sat quietly, her legal background evident in the way she was methodically organizing her talking points. Alyssa Farah Griffin rounded out the panel, looking slightly nervous as she always did when big celebrities were on the show. The show opened with its usual fanfare, the audience applauding as Whoopi introduced their guest. Jennifer Lopez walked out with that million-dollar smile, waving to the crowd, completely unaware that she was walking into what would become one of the most explosive television moments in recent memory. She took her seat next to Whoopi, crossing her legs elegantly and settling in for what she thought would be 20 minutes of pleasant conversation about her music, her businesses, maybe a few questions about her personal life. "Jennifer, welcome back to The View," Whoopi said warmly, her voice carrying that familiar, authoritative tone that has made her such a beloved figure in daytime television. "It has been too long since we have had you here." "Thank you so much for having me. It is always such a pleasure to be here with you ladies," Jennifer replied, her voice smooth and practiced. She had done this dance 1,000 times before, the carefully choreographed routine of celebrity interviews where everyone knows their role and nobody steps out of line. Sarah Haynes jumped in next, her voice bright and enthusiastic. "Your new album is absolutely incredible, Jennifer. The production quality, the vocals, everything about it feels so personal and authentic. Can you tell us about the inspiration behind some of these songs?" Jennifer leaned forward slightly, her eyes lighting up as she began to discuss her creative process. "You know, Sarah, this album really came from a place of wanting to connect with my fans on a deeper level. I've been in this industry for over 2 decades now, and I think people sometimes forget that behind all the glamour and the red carpets, I am still just a girl from the Bronx who loves to sing and perform." The conversation flowed naturally for the first few minutes, with Sunny asking about her business ventures and Alyssa inquiring about her upcoming tour dates. Jennifer seemed relaxed, comfortable, genuinely enjoying herself as she shared stories about working with different producers and collaborators on the new project. The audience was engaged, laughing at her jokes and applauding when she mentioned her children and how they inspire her work. But then Joy Behar cleared her throat, and something in the atmosphere shifted. Jennifer noticed it immediately, that subtle change in energy that every experienced performer learns to recognize. Joy had been unusually quiet during the opening segment, which was completely out of character for someone who typically dominated conversations from the moment cameras started rolling. "Jennifer," Joy began, her voice carrying a tone that was just slightly sharper than casual conversation, "I have to ask you about something that has been bothering me for quite some time now." Jennifer tilted her head slightly, still smiling but with a wariness creeping into her eyes. "Of course, Joy. What would you like to know?" "Well," Joy continued, leaning back in her chair with that signature smirk that regular viewers knew meant trouble was coming, "I have been watching your career for many years, and I have noticed a pattern that I think needs to be addressed." The other panelists exchanged glances, clearly not entirely sure where Joy was heading with this line of questioning. Whoopi raised an eyebrow, Sarah looked uncomfortable, and Sunny sat forward in her chair, her legal instincts telling her that this conversation was about to take a dramatic turn. "What kind of pattern are you referring to?" Jennifer asked, her media training kicking in as she maintained her composure while internally preparing for whatever was coming next. Joy shuffled through her notes dramatically, making a show of finding the right page as if she had not already memorized every word she planned to say. It seems to me that throughout your entire career, you have had this tendency to, shall we say, borrow inspiration from other artists. Your music, your dance moves, your fashion choices, even some of your business ideas. Do you not think it is time to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, you are not quite as original as you would like people to believe? The question hung in the air like a bomb that had just been dropped. The audience fell silent, sensing that something significant was happening, but not quite sure what to make of it. Jennifer's smile faltered for just a moment before she composed herself, but everyone at the table could see the flash of anger that crossed her face. "I am sorry, Joy, but I'm not sure I understand what you are implying," Jennifer replied, her voice still controlled but with an edge that had not been there moments before. Every artist draws inspiration from those who came before them. That is how music evolves, how culture grows and changes. "Oh, I think you understand exactly what I am implying." Joy shot back, clearly energized by Jennifer's defensive response. "Let's talk about your early music career, shall we? How many times have music critics pointed out the similarities between your songs and tracks that came out years before? How many choreographers have complained that you took their work and presented it as your own creative vision?" Whoopi attempted to jump in, sensing that the conversation was spiraling out of control. "Joy, I think maybe we should." "No, Whoopi," Joy interrupted, holding up her hand without taking her eyes off Jennifer. "I think this is a conversation that is long overdue. Jennifer has built an empire on the back of other people's creativity, and nobody in this industry seems willing to call her out on it." Jennifer's composure was beginning to crack, her hands gripping the arms of her chair as she struggled to maintain her professional demeanor. "Joy, I have worked incredibly hard for everything I have achieved in my career. I have collaborated with countless talented people, and I have always given credit where credit is due." "Have you, though?" Joy pressed, her voice getting louder and more confrontational. "What about the dancers who created routines that you later performed, as if they were your own choreography? What about the songwriters who never got proper recognition for their contributions to your biggest hits? What about the stylists and designers whose ideas you have appropriated over the years?" The tension at the table was becoming unbearable. Sarah was fidgeting with her papers, clearly wishing she could disappear. Sunny was watching the exchange with the intense focus of someone who was analyzing every word for potential legal implications. Alyssa looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, and Whoopi was shooting daggers at Joy, clearly furious that her co-host had turned what should have been a pleasant interview into an ambush. "Joy, this is completely inappropriate," Jennifer finally snapped, her carefully maintained facade cracking as her famous temper began to show through. "You invited me here to talk about my new album, not to launch some kind of personal attack based on industry gossip and tabloid speculation." "Personal attack?" Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Jennifer, this is called journalism. This is what happens when you spend decades avoiding the hard questions and surrounding yourself with people who are too scared or too invested in your success to tell you the truth." "The truth?" Jennifer's voice was rising now, her Bronx accent becoming more pronounced as her anger grew. "The truth is that you are sitting here trying to tear down a successful woman because it makes for good television. The truth is that you have built your entire career on being controversial and divisive, and apparently today I am your target." Joy's eyes lit up with the kind of malicious glee that comes from knowing you have successfully gotten under someone's skin. She leaned forward, clearly relishing the fact that she had managed to crack Jennifer's polished exterior. "Oh, so now I am the problem? Not the woman who has spent 20 years building a brand on borrowed creativity, but the person who finally has the courage to point it out?" "Joy, that is enough," Whoopi interjected firmly, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been navigating difficult conversations on television for decades. "This is not what we agreed to discuss today, and you know it." But Joy was not backing down. If anything, Whoopi's attempt to rein her in seemed to fuel her fire even more. "Whoopi, with all due respect, this is exactly the kind of conversation we should be having. When did this show become a place where celebrities can just come and promote their projects without any real scrutiny? When did we stop being journalists and start being cheerleaders?" Jennifer was struggling to maintain her composure, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. The audience could sense the raw emotion emanating from her, and many were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the entertainment they had expected when they came to see a taping of The View. "Joy, you want to talk about courage? Let's talk about courage," Jennifer said, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. It takes courage to put yourself out there as an artist, to risk failure every time you release something new. It takes courage to work in an industry that constantly tries to tear women down, especially women of color. What you are doing right now is not courage, it is cowardice. You are hiding behind your position at this table to launch personal attacks that you would never have the guts to make face-to-face in a private conversation. The accusation of cowardice hit Joy like a slap across the face. Her expression hardened, and any pretense of journalistic objectivity vanished completely. Cowardice? You want to see cowardice, Jennifer? Cowardice is building a career on other people's work, and then playing the victim when someone calls you out on it. Cowardice is using your celebrity status to avoid accountability for decades. Sarah Haynes, who had been trying to stay out of the increasingly volatile exchange, finally felt compelled to speak up. Ladies, I think we need to take a step back here. Jennifer, you are an incredibly talented performer who has brought joy to millions of people around the world. Joy, I understand you have concerns, but maybe there is a more constructive way to address them. Sarah, stay out of this. Joy snapped, turning her fury toward her colleague for a moment. This is bigger than just being nice and polite. This is about integrity in the entertainment industry. Do not tell Sarah to stay out of anything. Jennifer fired back, her protective instincts kicking in as she saw Joy turn on another person at the table. She is trying to be reasonable, which is more than I can say for you. You want to talk about integrity? Where is your integrity in blindsiding a guest with accusations and conspiracy theories? Sunny Hostin, who had been watching the exchange with the analytical eye of someone trained in conflict resolution, decided it was time to intervene with some legal perspective. Joy, I have to point out that what you are doing right now could potentially be considered defamatory. You are making serious accusations about Jennifer's character and business practices without presenting any concrete evidence to support your claims. Defamatory? Joy laughed bitterly. Sunny, everything I am saying is based on years of industry reports, interviews with collaborators, and documented instances of questionable creative practices. This is not defamation. This is long overdue accountability. Then, where's your documentation? Sunny pressed, her legal training evident in the way she was methodically dismantling Joy's position. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, present it. If you are making accusations based on rumors and speculation, then you need to acknowledge that. Jennifer seized on Sunny's support, feeling like she finally had an ally at the table. Thank you, Sunny. This is exactly what I am talking about. Joy has spent the last 10 minutes making wild accusations without providing a single piece of concrete evidence. This is character assassination disguised as journalism. Joy's face was getting redder by the minute, and it was clear that she had not expected this level of pushback from her colleagues. She had likely assumed that once she started the attack, the others would either stay silent or join in. Instead, she was finding herself increasingly isolated at her own table. "You want evidence?" Joy practically shouted, her voice echoing through the studio. How about the fact that 3 of your biggest hits from the early 2000s were originally recorded by other artists who never got proper credit? How about the dance routine from your most famous music video that was created by a choreographer who later sued you for theft of intellectual property? How about the fashion line that launched with designs that were suspiciously similar to pieces that had appeared in smaller designers' collections months earlier? The specific nature of Joy's accusations seemed to catch Jennifer off guard for a moment. These were not vague industry rumors. These were detailed claims that suggested Joy had done significant research before launching this attack. Jennifer's eyes narrowed as she realized that this ambush had been planned well in advance. Those lawsuits were settled out of court with no admission of wrongdoing, Jennifer replied. But her voice lacked some of the fire it had carried moments before. And if you had done your research properly, instead of just looking for ammunition to use against me, you would know that those cases were dismissed or resolved with mutual agreements that protected everyone involved. Settled out of court? Joy repeated mockingly. Of course they were settled out of court. That is what people do when they know they are guilty, but do not want the public to know the details. How much money have you paid over the years to keep people quiet about your creative borrowing, Jennifer? Alyssa Farah Griffin, who had been silent through most of the confrontation, finally found her voice. Joy, I think you are crossing a line here. Even if you have concerns about creative practices in the industry, this is not the appropriate forum for this kind of aggressive interrogation. Jennifer came here as our guest, and we owe her basic respect and courtesy. Respect and courtesy? Joy turned on Alyssa with the same venom she had been directing at Jennifer. Alyssa, you have been in this business long enough to know that respect and courtesy are earned, not automatically granted because someone is famous. Jennifer has built her entire brand on taking credit for other people's work, and now when someone finally calls her out on it, we are supposed to be polite about it? Jennifer was watching this exchange with growing amazement and disgust. Joy was not just attacking her anymore, she was turning on her own colleagues, revealing a level of hostility and bitterness that went far beyond professional journalism. This was personal for Joy, in a way that Jennifer was only beginning to understand. Joy, what is this really about? Jennifer asked, her voice calmer now as she tried to get to the root of the hostility. Because this feels like it goes way beyond concerns about creative integrity. This feels personal. Have I done something to offend you personally? Because if I have, I would rather you just tell me directly instead of hiding behind these professional accusations. For a moment, Joy's mask slipped completely. Her face contorted with a mixture of anger and something that looked almost like pain. You want to know what this is about, Jennifer? This is about watching someone like you coast through life on other people's talent while getting all the credit and all the rewards. This is about watching you become a billionaire by repackaging other people's creativity and calling it your own vision. Someone like me? Jennifer's voice was dangerously quiet now. What exactly does that mean, Joy? What kind of person am I exactly? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone at the table seemed to hold their breath, waiting for Joy's response. Even Joy seemed to realize that she was standing at the edge of a cliff, that her next words would either end this confrontation or push it into territory that none of them would be able to come back from. You know exactly what I mean, Joy said finally, her voice filled with years of accumulated resentment. You are everything that is wrong with this industry. You are fake, you are manufactured, and you are completely without shame when it comes to taking credit for other people's work. You represent everything I have spent my career fighting against. The words hit Jennifer like physical blows. Her face went pale, then flushed with renewed anger. She stood up slowly from her chair, her hands trembling with rage as she stared down at Joy with undisguised contempt. Get up, Jennifer said quietly, her voice carrying a menace that made everyone at the table freeze. Stand up and say that to my face, Joy. If you have the courage to make those accusations, then have the courage to stand up and face me when you make them. Joy remained seated for a moment, clearly weighing her options, as Jennifer towered over her with barely contained fury. The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in daytime television history. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether they should keep rolling or cut away from what was clearly becoming a personal confrontation rather than a professional interview. I said stand up, Jennifer repeated, her voice getting louder and more commanding. You have spent the last 15 minutes attacking my character, my integrity, and my entire career from the safety of that chair. If you really believe everything you have been saying, then have the decency to stand up and face me while you say it. Joy finally rose from her chair, but slowly and with obvious reluctance. She was a smaller woman than Jennifer, and without the protection of the interview table between them, the physical difference was stark. But her expression remained defiant, even as her voice betrayed a slight tremor of uncertainty. Fine, I am standing, Joy said, trying to maintain her aggressive tone. Does that somehow make your career more legitimate? Does standing up change the fact that you have built your entire brand on borrowed creativity and manufactured authenticity? You want to talk about manufactured authenticity? Jennifer stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than her earlier shouting. Let me tell you something about authenticity, Joy. Authentic people do not ambush guests on national television with personal attacks disguised as journalism. Authentic people do not spend decades hiding their bitterness and resentment behind a facade of professional curiosity. Whoopi was on her feet now too, moving between the two women with the practiced ease of someone who had mediated countless conflicts over her years in television. Ladies, this needs to stop right now. We are live on television, we have an audience. And this has gone way beyond any reasonable bounds of professional discourse. No, Whoopi, Jennifer said, not taking her eyes off Joy. Let her finish what she started. She clearly has more to say about my character, so let her say it. Let America see exactly what kind of person Joy Behar really is when the cameras are rolling and she thinks she has the upper hand. Joy's face was flushed with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. She had clearly not expected Jennifer to fight back this aggressively, and she was beginning to realize that she had badly miscalculated the dynamics of this confrontation. But her pride would not let her back down now, not with millions of people watching and her colleagues staring at her with a mixture of shock and disapproval. "You want to know what kind of person I am, Jennifer?" Joy's voice was shaking now, but whether from anger or fear was impossible to tell. "I am the kind of person who refuses to be intimidated by celebrities who think their fame makes them untouchable. I am the kind of person who believes that truth matters more than politeness." "Truth?" Jennifer laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You have not spoken a single word of truth since this conversation started. Everything you have said has been based on rumors, speculation, and your own personal issues with successful women." Sarah Haynes was trying desperately to regain control of the situation, her voice high and strained as she attempted to inject some reason into the chaos. "Jennifer, Joy, please. We can discuss these issues without it becoming personal. We are all professionals here. We can find a way to have this conversation that respects everyone involved." "Sarah, there's no conversation to be had here," Jennifer replied, still not breaking eye contact with Joy. "This woman invited me onto this show under false pretenses so she could launch a personal attack for reasons that have nothing to do with my music or my career. This is not journalism. This is a hit job." Sunny Hostin was watching the exchange with growing concern, her legal background making her acutely aware of how quickly this situation could spiral into something with serious consequences. "Joy, I really think you need to consider the legal implications of what you are saying. You are making serious accusations about Jennifer's business practices and personal character without providing any substantive evidence." "Legal implications?" Joy turned on Sunny with renewed fury. "Are you threatening me now? Is that what this has come to? We cannot even have honest conversations about celebrity culture without lawyers getting involved?" "I am not threatening anyone," Sunny replied calmly, her legal training evident in her measured response. "I am simply pointing out that there are professional and legal standards that govern how we conduct interviews, especially when we are discussing someone's reputation and career." Alyssa was nodding in agreement with Sunny, clearly disturbed by the direction the conversation had taken. "Joy, I have to agree with Sunny here. This has stopped being an interview and become something else entirely. Jennifer came here to discuss her new album, and instead she has been subjected to what amounts to a character assassination." Joy was now completely isolated at her own table, with every one of her colleagues either actively opposing her or trying to mediate the conflict she had created. But instead of backing down, she seemed to become even more desperate and aggressive, like a cornered animal lashing out at everything around her. "So now you are all ganging up on me?" Joy's voice was getting higher and more shrill. "I am the only one at this table with the courage to ask real questions, and instead of supporting journalism, you are all protecting a celebrity who has built her career on lies and theft." "That is it," Jennifer said, her voice cutting through Joy's increasingly frantic accusations. "I am done with this. I came here as a professional courtesy, to promote my work and connect with fans, and instead I've been ambushed by someone who clearly has personal issues that have nothing to do with me or my career." Jennifer turned away from Joy and began walking toward the edge of the set, her intention to leave clear to everyone in the studio. But Joy was not ready to let her go, not when she felt like she was finally getting the confrontation she had apparently been planning for months or even years. "That is right, run away," Joy called after her, her voice carrying across the studio. "That is what you always do when someone calls you out on your lies. Run away and let your publicist clean up the mess." Jennifer stopped dead in her tracks. For a moment, she stood completely still, her back to the table, her shoulders rigid with barely controlled rage. The entire studio held its breath, sensing that something significant was about to happen. When Jennifer turned around, her face was a mask of cold fury that was somehow more frightening than her earlier emotional outbursts. She walked back toward Joy with slow, deliberate steps, and everyone at the table instinctively moved back. "You made a mistake, Joy," Jennifer said, her voice deadly quiet. "A very big mistake. You could have asked legitimate questions about my career, my music, my business ventures. You could have been a professional journalist doing her job. Instead, you chose to make this personal. You chose to attack my character, my integrity, and my right to exist in this industry. And now you are going to learn why that was such a stupid decision." Joy tried to maintain her defiant posture, but Jennifer could see the fear creeping into her eyes. "Are you threatening me, Jennifer?" Because if you are, then you are proving everything I said about your character. I am not threatening you, Jennifer replied, moving even closer. I am promising you. I am promising you that your little ambush today is going to cost you more than you ever imagined. I am promising you that when I walk out of here, you are going to discover just how much power a woman like me actually has in this industry. The tension in the studio was so thick, it was almost suffocating. Audience members were shifting nervously in their seats, some beginning to stand as if preparing to leave. Camera operators were looking to their directors for guidance, unsure whether they should continue filming or cut away from what was clearly becoming a personal confrontation that had nothing to do with entertainment. Whoopi made one final attempt to restore order, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been the moderator of this show for years. Jennifer, Joy, this has to stop right now. We are going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to find a way to have a professional conversation, or we are going to end this interview. There is not going to be any interview when you come back, Jennifer said, not taking her eyes off Joy. I am leaving, and I am never coming back to this show as long as she is sitting at this table. Joy seemed to realize that she had pushed things too far, that her moment of vindictive triumph was about to turn into a professional disaster. She made one last desperate attempt to justify her actions. Jennifer, if you would just acknowledge that there might be some validity to the concerns I have raised. Acknowledge? Jennifer's voice rose to a shout that could be heard throughout the studio. You want me to acknowledge your lies and personal attacks? You want me to validate your jealousy and bitterness by pretending that your accusations have any basis in reality? That was the moment when studio security finally decided they needed to intervene. Two large men in dark suits appeared at the edges of the set, clearly ready to step in if the confrontation became physical. Their presence seemed to break the spell that had held everyone frozen, and suddenly there was movement and noise as producers and assistants rushed to manage the crisis. Get me out of here, Jennifer said to one of the security guards, her voice shaking with exhaustion and rage. Get me away from this woman before I do something I will regret. As Jennifer was escorted off the set, Joy made one final, desperate attempt to have the last word. This is exactly what I was talking about, she called after the departing star. This is how you handle any criticism, any accountability. You run away and hide behind your handlers. But Jennifer did not turn around. She walked off, the view set with her head held high, leaving behind one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history, and ensuring that her relationship with Joy Behar, and quite possibly the view itself, was permanently destroyed. The cameras kept rolling as the remaining panelists sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened and figure out how to salvage what was left of their show. If you made it this far into the story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment below with your thoughts on what Joy Behar was really trying to accomplish with this ambush. Do you think she had legitimate concerns about the entertainment industry, or was this just a personal attack disguised as journalism? Let me know what you think in the comments section.